Hi yogis, welcome to Yoga Chats with me, your host Greg Walsh. Today my special guest is Siobhan Flynn. Siobhan is one of Samadhi's Yin Yoga teachers and Vinyasa Yoga teacher, and Siobhan and myself have worked together for quite a few years. You're very welcome today, Siobhan.
Thank you, Greg. Nice to be here.
How many years have we worked together?
God, you know what? I think, is it 4 or is it 5?
I'm going to guess 5.
I think it might be 5. I think, yeah. Time goes fast, so
time does. Yeah, and you were teaching on a Thursday night in the Drogheda studio, and we have had an awful lot of over and back over the 5 years, let's say, and we always get on great. We always have a great laugh, and we talk fairly regularly on the...
We do.
But there's one funny thing. We've never met.
I know, it's mad. It's absolutely mad. And I think, was it maybe... Greg, was it a year and a half, 2 years ago when we were having a chat and we sort of just realized that we hadn't met, and we were like, maybe we should just keep it that way. It's a little bit mysterious, so odd. But, despite that, I think that we've grown quite close, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. We're good pals now. Yeah, and I think we should probably never meet because... I've been teaching for 18 months on Zoom, as have you. And there are people, like sometimes I meet someone having worked with them on Zoom and, like getting to know them, looking at their bodies, telling them what to do, working with, like recognizing their physique and everything. And then I meet them in person and it's like, bloody hell, you're really tall. Or you're actually not really tall. It's basic things like that. It's so funny. So so let's keep it. Let's keep it that way. Let's never meet. So Siobhan, tell me, what makes you tick? Because you're into Yin Yoga, you're into Vinyasa Yoga. Really, to me, that's they're in yoga terms, they're really quite poles apart. So I'm curious.
They are.
What drives you?
Yeah, they are. They are polar opposites. And I think that's probably what I love about each one of those styles of yoga. Vinyasa is my, number one. That is what made me fall in love with yoga. And I love the movement, the flow. I love that sort of dance-like feeling and the I suppose the way that you can be really creative as well. But when I was doing my training, and I've been practicing Vinyasa for years and years, but when I was actually doing my yoga teacher training, we did have a chance to, we had I can't remember her name, which is unfortunate. She was a wonderful teacher, our visiting Yin teacher from London, and she was fabulous. And I found the practice mentally difficult, challenging, because I was quite attuned and accustomed to moving in and out of poses quite, quickly. But when you're here, in these passive poses for 3, 4, 5 minutes, your brain does a lot of thinking and, really made me, I suppose, tune into that I'm supposed to be focusing on my breath, really listen to what my body is saying. And I really started to love it. And then a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I had the chance to train with Josh Summers. He was over in Dublin, and it was a fabulous experience. It really was. I suppose at that time, I wanted to be able to bring my students something else, something other than Vinyasa as well. I wanted to sort of broaden my teaching, and not necessarily also teach a Yin class, but be able to incorporate different elements and different styles of yoga into my teaching to make things interesting for my students as well. I think people can...
And that is kind of something, sorry to cut across you, but I know that's something of an ethos for you. You're quite interested in exploring styles?
Yeah, I am. Like, I said it to you before, I'm a naturally curious person. So I'm always looking for something. It doesn't matter how mad I may even think it is, how kind of out, in left field something feels. I love to try it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's fun to incorporate different things into your practice, and to bring that, then when I feel comfortable, to bring that into my classes as well. Mm-hmm. So I think the lovely thing about Yin is that, and what makes it really important, as a practice and as a regular part of your practice, is that it really does bring a completely different aspect to yoga. And it works the body in much different ways than your more active styles of yoga do. So it's,
How does Yin work? I've always heard that Yin is not stretching muscles, it's stretching the connective tissue. But as a bit of an anatomy, how would I say? I'm fond of anatomy. I'm also naturally quite curious, and I'm more likely to be going to bed reading an anatomy book than a novel. In terms of your physiology, I've always learned that, or been told that, connective tissue is plastic and muscle tissue is elastic, and it's uniquely elastic in the way that it rebounds, whereas the connective tissue, the fascia, for the most part, if you really stretch it, it may not rebound. Now, having said that, there's some fascia that you want to keep rigid. Like, I want my the tendons and ligaments holding the ligaments holding my knees together, for example. I don't want any slack in those. I want those to be quite firm. But perhaps, am I answering my own question here?
Yeah.
What's your take on this?
Well, you're right. Obviously, in Vinyasa and Ashtanga and Iyengar, whatever yoga you practice, those active styles of yoga, the reason we warm up is to prepare our muscles to accept all those poses, right? Yin, on the other hand, we start with no warm up. So you start on cold muscles. If you warm up, you become more flexible. Your muscles, take that slack, and they kind of soak up the whole practice. Mm-hmm. But we're looking to bring a permanent change to the fascia. So working on cold muscles, then in those passive stretches. So you're looking for these kind of levels of sensation, this kind of sweet spot where you find discomfort, like a happy discomfort, if you let me say that. We're so thinking about the fascia as a sponge, right? Okay. When a sponge is dry, it's hard as a rock. It can break. It's brittle, but you keep the sponge moist. You keep it doused with water. Then you can move, and it can change, and it can stretch, and it can do all sorts of wonderful things. Mm-hmm. So the idea is spending time in these poses allows your fascia to gently open. Important thing to remember is, after your practice, is to make sure you're actually drinking loads and loads of water. So what we want to do is bring all this sensation, bring this stress into the fascia, and then lubricate the body. So it's a fascinating thing. You can feel it happening. I think the difference between your active yoga and passive yoga, besides the fact that in Yin we're holding our poses for anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes, sometimes a little less, depending, is that you're feeling it in the moment, but the next day you're okay. You know, it's not like doing, you know, a kick-ass Greg class and the next day you're like, oh my God. Right? But so here it's in the moment. But not only, I think the important thing is not only are you working on deepening your flexibility, not only are you working on bringing that stress into the fascia, into the connective tissues, you're also training the mind to allow yourself that pause, to slow down. I think most of us are going at 100 miles an hour. You know, there's always something. It's always, and it's a hard thing. And even as a teacher, I find it really difficult, really challenging sometimes to move through my own personal practice without thinking about what I have to do. Whether it's like, oh, I forgot to do the laundry, or I forgot to do something in my work, or, you know, there's always something hanging over you. In Yin, you're there for so long. So trying to train the mind to only focus on the breath or focus on the sensations you're feeling. It's not easy. It's not easy. But when you get there, and it doesn't happen overnight, it's wonderful. It really is. I mean, Yin is important to me. It really is. And I feel the benefit of it. You know, there are different, I'm a naturally flexible person. So that has its own challenges. You know, as someone who's flexible, you have to really work on strength to protect your body as well. Yeah. And I think what Yin has done for me as a teacher, as a Vinyasa teacher, has really made me understand the way people's bodies work as well. You know, because I'm quite flexible, getting into shapes is relatively easy for me. And they look like they're supposed to look, or you think they're supposed to look. Mm-hmm. But when students would say, oh, but mine doesn't look like that, and they're struggling to get it to, you know, to get things the way they're supposed to look and look all beautiful, picture perfect. But, you know, through my Yin practice and through my Yin training, the understanding that everyone's skeleton is totally different. And no matter how often you practice or for how many years you practice, there are certain shapes that your body won't make. And that's okay. You know, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's your practice, and your body is making the shape that it's meant to make. So it's that kind of, I think, while the two practices are polar opposites, they also work beautifully in tandem. You know, where you get this amazing sort of power yoga, your aerobic workout, a slower hatha practice where you get that beautiful time in your poses, and, you know, that kind of presence of mind, and that Yin where you're really forced to kind of listen to the inner voice and to kind of fine tune everything and kind of stretch in a way that finds corners of the body that maybe you don't get to work on as often in your more active styles of yoga. So I'm probably blabbering on right now.
No, you're not, but you're making me wonder. Do you think that Yin Yoga could be a practice on its own? And I'm asking for your opinion rather than a hypothetical, from your experience. Or is it best as part of a broader practice palette?
Yin, in my opinion, Yin is something you do as well as. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do Vinyasa, or you have to do Ashtanga or Iyengar or whatever style of more active yoga you like to do. I like to think that you should practice both. But you might like running. And for the runner, a Yin practice is wonderful. So you need a Yin practice to balance out all that active practice you do, whatever that practice may be. And I'm not saying you should practice yin every day. I actually don't think a yin practice is necessary every day. Now, what I do think is if you have the time and if you can do it, I tend to just even practice 10 minutes of yin before I get out of bed in the morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a really portable practice because it mostly deals with the lower half. I mean, most of it is spent on the mat. So, I'm happy enough to be on my bed and spend 10 minutes in, 2 or 3 poses. Mm-hmm. And then I'm done with that for the day. I may not get around to a more active practice until much later in the day.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I like what you said, that you feel it is, it's mind, it's training for your mind. I think, yoga, we've all been at it a long while at this stage. And I found in the various lockdowns of the last 18 months, the mind aspect of yoga has really been what has helped me the most. Feeling physically good, that's always good. But being able to cope with long periods of not seeing family and friends, of the massive change in work, like teaching from the spare bedroom, seeing students but never actually connecting with them in a physical sense. I think that is where the yoga has been really useful. I think the physicality of yoga, it's great, but I think that ultimately what will carry us through our lives is the mental steadiness that it gives, and the space to pause for thought or for no thought sometimes, just to be able to pause. I find that has been hugely helpful. And I feel that, like you for the first lockdown, you were in class all the time, and it was so lovely because
I was.
And everyone would be in their room and you would be outside with the plants blowing behind you and the sun was shining or not, and you'd have layers on if it was cold. But it was always really, great to see you like that. But my classes are apparently quite physical, but to me, it's physicality it's a means to an end. It's about learning to control the mind, to work with the mind through using the body and the breath. And I think in the last 18 months, the breath has really come up for me so much more. It's so useful for me, so therapeutic. And so I try and share that, because for me, ultimately, it's whatever I'm doing, it's not that today's practice is for me what I'm doing in class, but whatever I'm buzzing on is going to come into
Absolutely.
And I know apologies, go on, Siobhan.
So I was just going to say, I think, for me, and I would imagine for most people, yoga is an evolving practice. It changes. It's different for you every day why you decide to get onto the mat. And even maybe people that come to your classes for the first time, it may be for the purely physical. And that's fine. That's absolutely okay. But I think it eventually, changes, and it becomes more of a holistic practice. And this sounds probably a little bit mad, but I think my favorite thing about yoga, this does sound a bit mad, is that occasionally, whether it's during practice or whether it's maybe a few hours after, and you catch yourself just with a smile. You don't know why, but without sounding, a little wishy-washy, hippy-dippy, it's this sense of serenity, where you're not particularly happy about a particular thing. It's just a sense of being centered, and does that sound crazy? But that's sort of what I really love about it.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I find, I'm doing something, I'm standing, and that kind of trikonasana, I can feel my feet, I can feel my legs, and that sounds silly, but it has been shown that has an effect, a beneficial effect on your neurology. But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm doing this. And that to me is something that yoga gives, that sense of, I'm actually here experiencing this, so you become, you're not just the experience, you're also the experiencer and aware of being the experiencer, having the experience. And just that thought is great. You do like to move around styles a little bit. What are you doing at the moment?
I do. Well, right now I am practicing a 40-day Kundalini Kriya. And of course, typical, I would pick probably the hardest thing to do. I had the option of doing just a 2-minute daily meditation, but I went for the full-blown 45-minute Kriya. So yeah, Kundalini is obviously totally different. It's something that I started practicing about a year ago. It was a wonderful teacher who also teaches Vinyasa and Hatha. Not Hatha, sorry, Vinyasa and Yin. And I just really fell in love with the sort of madness of it all. It's totally different from any other yoga practice. It really is. That the kriyas, the practices in themselves are really interesting and different and sort of, out there. Lots of chanting, which I love. Chanting is a really funny thing, because I remember the first time going to a workshop that with my sister-in-law. And we had to do sort of a half an hour of chanting. And God, did we giggle. I mean, grown women, but we giggled, but it was okay. We didn't get yelled at. It was just, we had the words completely wrong. It was all very funny, but at the same time, there was something there that really clicked and I loved. And, practicing outside, Kundalini, practicing the Adi mantra or the Mangalacharan. And, at first I was really self-conscious about, chanting outside in my back garden and thinking, oh God, my neighbors, I'm not in this big spacious, back garden. My neighbors must be thinking, God, this woman is absolutely insane. But I think it does something for you. It doesn't matter. And I like to incorporate that into my classes sometimes, maybe not those particular chants, but other ones that are more apt for the practice. But, there is this feeling like, oh God, it's different. But it's just what you get from it. Like, it doesn't matter. And the Kriya itself, why am I doing it? I'm just like the experience of it. And for me, it's really a journey into, I suppose, maybe boosting confidence. Most people that know me would think that I was like super confident, but I mean, everyone has their days. And I think, to find, to really boost my willpower, the fact that I'm forced to do it. It doesn't feel like I'm forced, but when you have to do something, it becomes more challenging. So that, and Kundalini itself, while it is kind of out there, I do occasionally incorporate a bit of it into my Yin classes or my Vinyasa classes. I think in an interesting and in a fun way. And it's never just thrown in there just for the sake of it. It has a place and it's connected to whatever we're doing in class. I think it's important for people on any kind of yogic path to open themselves up to different styles of yoga, to try it. They don't have to like it. They can do it, and then they can say, that's not for me. but it's important to approach every practice with an open mind, because you could be surprised. You know, it might be something that really makes a connection for you. I'm sure you know a bit about Kundalini. It is a different animal altogether.
It's a different animal, exactly. It's coming from a different, from a totally different place. And like, we won't get into the details, but Yogi Bhajan was the guru of Kundalini, and he has been, we've all read the allegations. Yeah. So how do you manage that, knowing that he, would you say he came up with the practice, or certainly he promoted it? You know, it's very much seen as his. Where do you stand?
You know, it is a difficult thing. What I think is that, for me, what I get out of Kundalini is removed from him. You know, I had said to you previously, I'm not a Kundalini teacher. I'm not Kundalini trained, but that doesn't mean, and you know, the allegations are awful, and you know, I wouldn't like to be associated with that. However, the practice in itself, if it brings something useful to people, and it clearly does, I suppose the practice itself shouldn't be denigrated by the man. Sure. You know, I think for me, I take what I can. I take the positive from it. With all yoga styles, or with anything, if I love something and maybe it doesn't fit into the puzzle, into the jigsaw completely, well, then you adjust. You change. You take what you need from something, and you adapt it to fit into your thought process. Some people will hear this and they'll be like, that's absolutely wrong. You can't just pick and choose what you want. But you know what? I think you can. I think to be a happy person, you take what you want, and to be a happy yogi, you take what is good for you and you make it into something that works for you. And that, I think, is probably the beauty of yoga, that you can adapt it to your body, adapt it to your mind, adapt it to your spirituality if you're a spiritual person. You know, so that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I have you. I think, I think some people might disagree with you and say it's more useful to stick with, a single practice, maybe a single teacher. But I think even people who are like that, they are actually taking what they need. So, and if you don't do that, because what is that? It's really, it's applying your own intelligence, and it's knowing what your needs are, and honoring those. You know, I think that's important for us. Like, that's, we're choosing to do yoga, and we are doing it for a certain reason. And so, you know, take what we can to help us in that journey, for that reason. You know, I think that's, I'm fine with it.
Exactly. Sure. And, you know, to kind of build on that, and my Yin practice, or my Yin teaching style as well, and not just mine, but the teachings of Yin as a whole, that it's really important, because, and I sort of believe this more now as I teach Yin more and more, that it's really important for students to take control of their practice, to really be their best. You know, I'm there to guide. I'm there to guide people, if I can, and honored to do so. But it's their practice and their bodies, and I can't know what they're feeling. So it's so important for people to really connect with what they're feeling and to take personal responsibility for what they're feeling, and to understand that pushing past something, pushing past your edge, or pushing into pain is not going to be good for anyone. It won't be good for you as a student. It won't be good for your teacher either. So there's that kind of personal responsibility.
And we can never tell someone what to feel. I remember one time seeing a teacher teach, and they were telling, in this pose, you should feel this. And I thought, that's a big claim to make, because, you know, in a basic pose, you know, yoga usually is working across the body. It's if you go, say, to the gym, you will be trying to work in smaller areas, working on the bicep or the tricep. Whereas in yoga, mostly each of the poses, a lot of them are full body. And so if I'm stiff in my calves, or my hamstrings, or my glutes, or maybe I've got an injury in my wherever, you're going to feel it in very different places, depending on your structure, your history. And what I tend to do in class these days, it's sort of my workaround for that. I tell them, you may not feel this, but I'm personally feeling this here. And sometimes I'll tell them why, you know, and so this is, but my idea is to give them a clue, just give them, sort of open the door a little to their, you know, what's the inner experience in it. But I will always say, but you may feel something different. And that's what's important. It's not what I feel, because, you know, I've got a particular history, and yours is going to be different. So, and then of course you get some people and they're like, I don't feel anything.
Exactly. Absolutely. And that's okay. That's the way it's meant to be. And that's very yin-like, Craig, what you do in class, because it's really important. You know, as the yin teacher, I'm asking people to observe what they're feeling. I'm not saying you should feel it here and there. I'm saying perhaps you might feel it here. You might feel it in 20 places. The person next to you may be only in one place. You might not feel anything, you know, and then to say what level of sensation. And then, of course, that's very personal in itself as well, because if we're looking for sensation around, say, between, you know, like a 2 and a 3 on a scale from 1 to 5, that sort of thing. Pain, or I should say not pain, sensation is different for people as well. Like what they feel as a 2 or a 3 is someone else's 4 or 5. Sometimes people relate to those numbers. Sometimes people relate to adjectives. So it makes it a really personal practice, you know, super, super introspective. And there's a beauty in that. You know, I think that you really start to discover your own body, to really understand it, and to know that your right side isn't going to be the same as your left side. When, you know, none of us are symmetrical. Today's practice is going to be totally different from tomorrow's practice. Every day is different. You know, sometimes you can't, you know, I had like 2 months there 2 years ago. I was very upset by it, where I lost my splits. I can go into the splits, no problem. But for 2 months, I couldn't do it. I don't know why. I lost them. It was very upsetting. That was my type A. Yeah. It really annoyed me. Why it happened, I don't know. I'd say I made it worse by stressing over it. But eventually it just, you know, it just kind of, as if it never happened, they you know, they returned. But it's, you know, it's, I don't know.
I'm curious what you were doing that the splits went, and what you were doing.
I don't know. I don't even remember.
But in a way, what's more interesting is your reaction to it, because, you know, we're all, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm growing older. I mostly don't realize it, but sometimes I do. And sometimes my body tells me. And, you know, things like splits will go. But what's more interesting is how we respond to that, how we modify our practice. Like, I'd like to have a practice that I can work with and work on and enjoy. Mostly, that's the key word, enjoy. Find the joy in it until the end of my days. So, but I know it will probably not involve splits. I used to, and I don't. And I'd say my splits could be quite depressing these days, but I'm not going to get depressed over it, because I'm using it to work on my mind rather than to make the shape. Yeah. So, yeah, yoga.
You know, it was very upsetting for me. It was, and I suppose I approached it like a child, and there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, yoga in itself, I think some elements of it, and life for that matter, should be approached with that kind of childlike wonder, as much as possible. But, you know, the irritation, the levels of the irritation that I felt, you know, that I somehow had, maybe it was an age thing, maybe, but I mean, they came back, but maybe that is what irritated me, you know, like why all of a sudden? I don't know what I was doing, Greg, that I maybe it was a blockage of some sort. Maybe it was more of an emotional kind of thing. I don't know. It could be any number of things.
It could have been did you take up running, or you could have been driving more? Or
perhaps I can say, I would love to say that I'm a runner, but I'm not. And that is something that I can't. I've tried on several occasions, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Yeah. I mean, I love to walk. I'll walk fast. I'm right here on the beach. You know, it's a beautiful place. Maybe I was walking more. I don't know.
Could be. Yeah, I'm the same as you. I've tried running many times, and at this stage, my knees prefer me to walk, and I much prefer to walk. So, and like you, I'll walk fast. So, and these days, I have a dog who drags me around the place.
Yeah.
So, and that's quite useful as well. So, Siobhan, it's been an absolute pleasure having the yoga chats with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Greg. It was lovely chatting.
Well, I think on behalf of all the people who are tuning in, a big thank you. So, and yoga chatters at home, that's all from me, Greg Walsh. We will be back again soon for more yoga chats.